They mocked him for his background, humiliated him in front of the whole class, and thought they could break him. But what they didn't know was that this quiet, black scholarship student had a skill that would flip the entire campus on its head. What would you do if your silence held more power than their words? Harrington College wasn't just any school. It was a polished diamond set high above the city, gleaming with legacy and wealth. The students walked the marble hallways with the ease of those who never had to worry about rent, food, or failure. Into this world stepped Nelson Ward, quiet, composed, black, and on a full scholarship. The morning sun hadn't even cleared the towers of the engineering building when Nelson entered his first robotics lab. He moved like someone used to being invisible, his hoodie up, backpack tight against his shoulders, eyes scanning but never lingering. The room buzzed with chatter until it didn't. One by one, heads turned. The whispers came next. Who's the transfer? Scholarship kid, right? Is he even supposed to be in this section? Jason leaned back in his chair, Alpha fraternity pin shining on his blazer, and grinned like he owned the room. He did, in a way. His family donated an entire wing of the science complex. His fraternity, the Alphas, didn't just dominate sports and politics. They controlled the social pulse of Harrington. Jason's voice cut through the murmurs. Hey, new guy, you got lost on your way to janitorial orientation? Or? Laughter exploded around him. Nelson didn't respond. He just found his workstation, opened his notebook, and began reviewing the schematic on the lab screen. The assignment was brutal. Simulate a prosthetic hand capable of adaptive grip using only raw servos and custom logic. No templates. Most students stared blankly at the board. Nelson's fingers flew over the keyboard. Jason rolled his eyes. You know, we usually wait until week 2 before pretending to be geniuses. Another Alpha chimed in. Careful, he might make us look bad. An hour passed. Nelson didn't speak. He built. By the end of class, his simulation hand was flexing around different shapes with seamless precision. The professor, a tenured robotics engineer, stopped mid-lecture and stared. You built this from scratch? She asked. Yes, ma'am, Nelson replied without flinching. Jason scoffed. Sure he did. Probably stole the code from Reddit or some back-alley YouTube channel. The professor gave Jason a flat look. Unless Reddit now features original logic in 3 languages and custom motor control loops, I'd say you're wrong. The class was silent. Nelson packed his things slowly. His hands were steady, but inside him, something familiar was stirring. That pressure behind the eyes, that taste of heat in his chest. It had always been there, just under the surface. Every time he'd had to bite his tongue. Every time someone underestimated him, judged him, mocked him, he walked out of class without a word. But as he passed through the courtyard, his mind wandered. Not to what Jason had said, but to something else. A memory from 2 years earlier. A dusty gym. The smell of sweat and rubber mats. His instructor, Coach Duran, circling him with calm, methodical footsteps. You're small. That's a fact, the coach said. But you've got leverage. You've got patience. And when the time is right, you strike. Clean, fast, and without ego. Nelson dropped to one knee, wrapped an arm under his sparring partner's leg, and flipped him effortlessly. Duran clapped once. Good. Now again. Back to present. Nelson walked past the grand fountain in the quad, hoodie still pulled up, and smiled just barely to himself. Jason thought this was over. He had no idea. By the end of Nelson's second week, the Alphas had made him their favorite target. It wasn't the first time he'd dealt with guys like Jason, arrogant, born into privilege, and addicted to control. But Harrington was different. Here, Jason didn't just run a frat. He ran a system. Professors played favorites. Parties were invitations to loyalty. And everyone, even the dean, seemed to smile a little wider when Jason was around. But Nelson had seen enough of the system. He'd grown up watching his community picked apart by people who thought power was a birthright. He didn't speak much, but he saw everything, and he had a plan. It started with a conversation in the library. Leah Rivera, editor of the student paper, was hunched over a laptop, surrounded by half-empty coffee cups. Her eyes were sharp behind her glasses, scanning columns of faculty budgets and academic records. Nelson slid into the chair across from her without a word. Leah didn't even look up. "If you're here to ask me out, save us both the time. I'm here because you're the only one digging into the alphas," he said. She blinked, then leaned forward. "What do you know?" "Enough to burn it all down," Nelson replied. Jason's scam wasn't just some minor cheating ring. He and the alphas were running a full-fledged academic black market, custom essays, completed lab work, even answers to pre-release exams. In exchange, they offered party invites, social favors, and guarantees that professors would overlook suspicious work. Nelson had already traced a few plagiarized reports to ghostwritten IPs registered offshore. But he needed more. He needed proof. So he baited the trap. He let slip, loud enough for a few alpha loyalists to overhear, that he was overwhelmed with his coursework. Within 2 days, a sleek-looking student named Travis approached him after class. "You know, the alphas can help with that," Travis said smoothly. "We take care of our own." "I'm not one of you," Nelson replied flatly. Travis smirked. "You don't have to be. You just need to want an easier ride." Nelson played dumb, took the pamphlet, waited, and when the offer arrived, custom code for his midterm robotics project, written for a price, he recorded the entire transaction through a hidden app on his smartwatch. Later that night, he and Leah sat in her dorm room, listening to the audio. "Jesus," she whispered. "This is big." Nelson looked out the window. "It's not enough. We need to expose Jason directly." Leah raised an eyebrow. "How do you plan to do that?" Nelson turned to her. "I'm gonna let him think he can beat me." The challenge came casually over lunch. Jason strolled up to Nelson in the quad, flanked by 2 alpha brothers. His voice was loud, arrogant, calculated for maximum audience. "Hey, scholarship star. Word is you like to act tough behind a keyboard. How about a little real-world competition?" Nelson raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Jason grinned. "Fight night. Alpha style. We've got a private gym. Octagon ring. Nothing dirty, just a friendly match. You game?" Nelson didn't answer right away. He looked at Jason, then around at the students beginning to gather. Phones were already out, recording, whispering. He knew what this was, humiliation theater. "Perfect. I'm in," Nelson said. 2 nights later, the gym was packed. It wasn't part of campus officially, but everyone called it the Student Arena. Owned by an alumnus and dominated by alpha presence, the gym was sleek and dark, the octagon ring lit from above like a stage. The smell of sweat and ego was thick in the air. Jason warmed up in the corner, bouncing on his heels, gloves on, wearing a designer rash guard. He'd boxed since high school, trained with private coaches. He looked good, polished, confident. Nelson, meanwhile, wore a simple black GI. No flash, no gloves, just quiet focus. The crowd laughed. "Does he even know what sport this is?" "I think he forgot his gloves, bro." Jason chuckled. "Don't blink," he told the crowd. "You'll miss it." The bell rang. Jason lunged. Nelson slipped sideways, his movement clean, fluid, almost slow. Jason threw a right hook, fast and mean, but Nelson caught it midair, pivoted, and spun into a takedown. Jason hit the mat with a thud. Gasps echoed. He scrambled up, face red. "Lucky shot," he growled, rushing again. This time, Nelson ducked low, hooked his leg around Jason's ankle, and swept him clean off his feet. In seconds, Nelson had mounted him, arms wrapped, legs locked. Jason flailed. Nelson tightened the hold. "Tap," Nelson whispered, just loud enough. Jason grunted, kicked, twisted. "Tap." Jason, breathless, slapped the mat. The bell rang again. Silence. Then chaos. Phones up. Cameras flashing. Students shouting. Someone screamed, "Whoa! Did you see that?" Leah was already uploading the video. By the time Jason stood up, red-faced and gasping, the footage was everywhere. On campus forums, Instagram, TikTok. Within an hour, it had 50,000 views. Nelson walked out of the octagon without looking back. He didn't need to. Jason had tried to embarrass him on Alpha Turf and ended up exposed. And Nelson? He'd only just begun. Jason spent the next 2 days locked away in the Alpha house, licking his wounds. The viral video of his defeat wasn't just humiliating, it was devastating. For a guy like Jason, image was everything. And now, the whole campus had seen him flat on his back, tapping out like a scared freshman. The comments were brutal. The memes? Even worse. But Jason wasn't stupid. He knew Nelson didn't just come to fight. He came with a plan. Inside a private room in the Alpha house, Jason met with his core. 5 of the most influential seniors on campus. Future tech CEOs, sons of judges, grandsons of senators. They sat in leather chairs, sipping aged bourbon like they were already on Wall Street. "He's not just another transfer," one of them said. "He's digging into our people. I've already heard whispers he's talking to the school paper, trying to blow up the tutoring ring." Jason's jaw tightened. "Then we stop him, before this turns into something we can't clean up." "What do you suggest?" Jason leaned forward. "We isolate him, smear him, and if that doesn't work, we burn him down the old-fashioned way." By Monday morning, Nelson noticed the shift. People who used to smile at him on campus now looked away. His TA in computational theory suddenly misplaced his latest assignment. Rumors spread like wildfire, claims that he was violent, unstable, that he'd transferred because of a disciplinary expulsion. But Nelson wasn't shaken. He'd seen this tactic before. "They're trying to break your credibility," Leah told him, sliding her laptop across the table in the coffee shop. "But I got something." Nelson scrolled through the files. Tuition records, off-the-books donations, evidence that Jason's father had made sizable contributions to certain department heads. Professors who were suddenly very lenient with Alpha students. "Still not enough," he muttered. "We need a direct link. Something undeniable." Leah grinned. "Already working on it. You ever heard of Theta Lab?" Nelson's eyes narrowed. "The tech startup incubator?" She nodded. "Funded by alumni. Offers exclusive internships, only to Alpha-connected students. Guess who's listed as an advisor?" "Jason," Nelson said. "Bingo. And better yet, Theta Lab uses student prototypes in their commercial pitches, including stolen code from non-Alpha students." Nelson's mind clicked into gear. They weren't just cheating. They were profiting off other people's work. That night, Nelson returned to his dorm to find his door open. Everything was trashed. His books scattered. His laptop gone. Posters ripped. His GI torn in half and thrown into the sink. On the mirror, in red marker, "Go home. Fraud." Campus security filed a report, but Nelson knew better. No cameras had seen anything, no witnesses, and no urgency from the administration. When he told them about the missing files, the guards shrugged. No way to prove they were taken, but they had been taken. All his evidence gone, or so they thought. Nelson pulled out an old flash drive from his backpack, encrypted, hidden inside a hollowed-out USB hub. Backup copies of everything. The tutoring ring, the plagiarism, the Theta Lab connections, and more. They thought they'd silenced him. They didn't know Nelson grew up building firewalls against predators much worse than frat boys. 2 days later, Leah published the story. Front page. Blistering headline. "Alpha Privilege. The secret network of cheating, bribery, and academic theft behind Harrington's Golden Boys." The article was devastating. Screenshots, documents, quotes from anonymous students who'd been pushed out of internships, who'd watched their projects rebranded and sold without credit. The Theta Lab connection hit hardest. Nelson's quiet voice, quoted directly, cut through the noise. "At Harrington, you're told to work hard and earn your place. But what happens when the system is built to keep you beneath the people who never had to earn theirs?" The campus exploded. Forums lit up. Students organized protests. Theta Lab went into lockdown. The university issued a vague statement about investigating the allegations. Jason, silent, until Friday. A new message appeared on Nelson's phone. "Fight me. No cameras. No crowd. You and me. Tonight. One last round. The address was the same gym, the Octagon. Leah tried to stop him. This is bait. You've already won. Don't give him what he wants. Nelson stood quietly, then said, "This isn't about me anymore." The gym was dark when he arrived. No crowd, no lights, just Jason, already in the ring, gloves on, breathing hard like he'd been waiting all day. "You think you're some kind of hero?" Jason spat. "You humiliated me. You ruined everything I've built." Nelson stepped into the ring. "You built it on lies." Jason came at him hard, sloppy, angry, furious. Nelson didn't try to counter. Not yet. He dodged, absorbed a punch to the ribs, another to the jaw. Let Jason burn through his rage. "You think you belong here?" Jason shouted. "You're just a project kid playing rebel. You'll never be one of us." Nelson finally struck. One clean hit to the gut, then a twist that took Jason off his feet. He stood over him. "I don't want to be one of you," he said. Jason groaned, too weak to reply. Nelson turned, walked to the edge of the ring, and left him there, alone, panting, forgotten. By morning, Jason was suspended. Theta Lab issued a statement cutting all ties with the Alpha House. Faculty resignations followed. Investigations deepened. Nelson didn't smile. He didn't post about it. He just returned to class, sat down, opened his notebook, and got back to work. Spring crept into Harrington like a second chance. The snow had melted, the sky seemed wider, and for the first time in a long time, Nelson could breathe without the weight of a fight looming over him. His name no longer traveled through whispers. It moved in conversations, real ones, in classrooms, in cafeterias. Students he'd never met walked up to him, some shaking his hand, others just nodding in silent respect. A few apologized for believing the rumors. One even thanked him for waking up the campus. Still, Nelson didn't chase praise. He chased peace. He and Leah sat under the old maple tree outside the science building, the one that bloomed pink every April. "It's weird," she said, sipping coffee. "You set out to expose a broken system, and now half the faculty wants you to speak at graduation." Nelson chuckled, eyes on the horizon. "I'm not even a senior. Doesn't matter. You became the voice of something people didn't know they needed to hear." A breeze passed. For a moment, he let it all settle, everything that had happened. The fight, the fallout, the changes. "Jason?" he asked. Leah nodded. "He's gone. Took a leave. Some say he transferred. Others say his dad pulled strings to get him into a rehab program. Anger issues, they're calling it." Nelson didn't smile at that, just a quiet exhale. "Do you think people can really change?" he asked. Leah turned to him, soft eyes searching. "You did." 2 weeks later, the university announced major reforms. Theta Lab was placed under new oversight. A public academic review board was introduced to prevent favoritism and grade manipulation. The tutoring ring dissolved, replaced by a peer-to-peer platform developed by a team of students, led by Nelson. What shocked the administration the most wasn't Nelson's exposure of the corruption. It was that he didn't use it to elevate himself. No interviews, no TED Talks, no personal glory, just systems fixed, fairness restored, quiet dignity. One day, Professor Aldridge stopped Nelson after class. He was one of the few faculty members who had kept his hands clean, one of the few who'd always believed in merit. "I saw what you did," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Not just what you exposed, but what you inspired." Nelson waited. "I have a question," the professor continued. "Have you ever considered becoming a teacher?" That caught Nelson off guard. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I've always thought of myself as a builder, not a teacher." The professor smiled. "They're the same thing, really. Builders shape tools. Teachers shape minds." The gym where the alphas used to rule had changed, too. It wasn't locked anymore. It had been open to all students, converted into a training center with open mats, no politics, and no hierarchy. One night, Nelson returned. He bowed before entering the octagon, not out of nostalgia, but respect. A freshman approached him awkwardly. Small. Nervous. "You're Nelson, right?" He nodded. "Would you mind showing me how to do that? That arm triangle you used?" Nelson smiled. "Sure," he said, stepping onto the mat. "First lesson, this isn't about beating someone else. It's about mastering yourself." The kid listened closely, and for the first time in years, Nelson wasn't just defending himself. He was passing something forward. Graduation came fast. Nelson sat in the audience, not on the stage. No spotlight, no speech. But as the dean listed student names and achievements, a hush fell over the crowd when she paused. "And though he's not graduating today, we'd like to recognize a student whose actions sparked reform, reminded us of our values, and proved that true strength lies not in force, but in character." She looked up, scanning the crowd. Nelson sat still, almost embarrassed. Leah elbowed him, whispering, "Stand up, nerd." He stood. Applause erupted. It wasn't loud. It was genuine. For Nelson, that was more than enough. That summer, Nelson received a letter. A full ride to graduate school anywhere he chose, funded by a private foundation that had read about his story and wanted him to continue his work in education, ethics, and equity. He read the letter twice, then looked out the window at the sun setting over Harrington. The war was over, but the work, just beginning, and this time he wasn't fighting alone. This story isn't just about revenge or redemption, it's about breaking cycles, about the quiet strength that forces real change. If you were in Nelson's shoes, would you have fought back or forgiven? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you felt something watching this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to embrace the journey for more powerful stories like this one.